just discovered the Tolkien Estates website, and it is a wonderful resource for Tolkien enthusiasts. Check this out. So right now I'm looking at photographs of Tolkien throughout his life. So him working in his new home in Oxford. There's photos of his children, his family, Edith when she was young. Here's Michael Tolkien. It's just wonderful. And then if you go to writing, you can look at any of his works here and explore them. And there's all kinds of scholarship on this website and pieces written by his children, Christopher, Priscilla. So for example, we can look here, Letters from Father Christmas. So Bailey Tolkien on Letters from Father Christmas. Okay, Christopher's wife, that's who she is. And she edited Letters from Father Christmas. And so here she is just describing them and describing her experience editing them. And how wonderful is this? This site is full of excellent resources. See, we've got all his letters, we've got scholarship on Tolkien, illustrations, and again, all his writings. Definitely check out the Tolkien Estate website. I should be doing master's homework right now, but I feel compelled to read Leaf by Niggle by J.R.R. Tolkien, which is a short story that's kind of an allegory of his creative process. And I'm trying to find it online. So far, I haven't found like a free version to read online, so I think I might need to order in a print copy. Okay, I did manage to find an online version of Leaf by Niggle, so I'm gonna get into that for the next hour or so, and I'm really looking forward to this. I feel like this story is going to speak to me. I just know it. I just have a feeling. I just finished my first read of Leaf by Niggle, and I feel a little teary. Wow. It's a sweet, simple story with a lot of depth and meaning, just like the rest of Tolkien's work. I think what I'm going to do now is read the piece by Priscilla Tolkien, just her thoughts and analysis and the background of Leaf by Niggle. And then I think I gotta give it a second read. Maybe I'll even read it out loud to myself. That might be a good practice. So this is how Leaf by Niggle begins. There was once a little man called Niggle who had a long journey to make. He did not want to go. Indeed, the whole idea was distasteful to him, but he could not get out of it. He knew he would have to start sometime, but he did not hurry with his preparations. Niggle was a painter, not a very successful one, partly because he had many other things to do. Most of these things he thought were a nuisance, but he did them fairly well when he could not get out of them, which, in his opinion, was far too often. So Niggle is this painter, not very successful, because he has very many other things to do. How many of us writers and artist wannabes can understand that? He's the sort of painter who could paint leaves better than trees. He spends all his time on one leaf. One picture he started with a single leaf, which soon became a tree and then a whole world, and it kind of just opens up to Niggle. He's not even making it. It's almost out of his control. This world is just springing up from his one leaf. He thinks all the time about his big canvas and his painting. It seems to him to be the only real beautiful painting in the world, and it's all he thinks about day in and day out. He wants to focus on his painting and finish it before he needs to go on his long journey. But he's too kind-hearted and other people's needs keep getting in the way. He keeps helping people out. He keeps doing the right thing. And it's just taking up a lot of his time, a lot of time that he would love to spend working on his painting. Eventually, he has this one friend, Parrish, who is especially a burden to him, a neighbor named Parrish, who he's constantly needing to go help out, and this Parrish guy is just a big distraction for Niggle, the artist. Eventually, Niggle gets sick and he's taken away from home, and these voices kind of are arguing over him. One of them is sort of judging him for putting his art above helping his neighbors. The other one is more gracious to him, and then he finds himself in this place. He takes a train, he takes a bike, and then he's in this beautiful natural world, this open country, and all of a sudden he finds himself standing in front of his tree, the tree that he painted, except it's a real tree, it's actualized. He's standing before his true art. This whole world opens up to him. He realizes that he's inside his painting. He's in the place that he so often tried to paint. But it's perfect now, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And then all of a sudden, his old neighbor Parrish is there, and he realizes that the person who used to distract him from his art, he actually needs that person to help him finish his art. Now that he's living within the world, he actually needs to cultivate it, cultivate the trees, cultivate the gardens, and he's just an artist, not a gardener, so he doesn't know how to do this, hence why he gets Parrish to help him. And so they're working on this beautiful world together. They're cultivating this perfect world for those who would come after. You know, Parrish mentions that he's gonna wait there for his wife to show her through. And all this time there's this destination just beyond this perfect country that is Niggle's painting, Niggle's world. And it's the mountains, and that's their final destination that they're trying to get to. Almost like the pinnacle of beauty. The best part is when Parrish is wondering where he is, and that voice says that it is Niggle's country. And Parrish goes, no, Niggle's old paintings, I used to laugh at those like they weren't real. That was just a painting. And then the voice says, or the man says, no, it was only a glimpse then, but you might have caught the glimpse if you had ever thought it worthwhile to try. So Parrish can't believe that the art that Niggle worked on his whole life is actualized, is real, and is true, and was all worthwhile, but now he's living in it, and yeah, he has to kind of regret the fact that he used to laugh at it and disbelieve in it, because here he is, enjoying it for himself. I don't want to give away the entire plot and narrative of the short story, and especially not the end, because I think that you should go read it, and I'm also still just processing it myself and trying to figure out what this all means, but I'm just struck by how beautiful it is, how relatable it is. This man who spends his whole life trying to create art, it's his passion, it's always on his mind. And real life, ordinary life just keeps getting in the way, and he's trying to be a moral person and to do his duty and to do the right thing, and so he allows ordinary life, he allows other people's needs to get in the way of his one big project, his art, his deepest love. Priscilla Tolkien has an article on the Tolkien Estate website, which is tolkienestate.com, and she says that the significance of the story is this. So, in the space of 20 pages, we have a miniature spiritual odyssey where I believe it is clear that my father expounds his Christian belief that without our lives being seen as a journey to God, our artistic or other talents will come to nothing. The story is indeed profoundly autobiographical and reveals not merely his Christianity but also his Roman Catholicism in his imaginative presentation of the doctrine of purgatory. So that must be this middle place, the country where Niggle and Parrish are working to make this country better, with the mountains in view, the mountains being heaven or the final destination. This being the experience of purification and healing needed by most of us after death before the individual soul can reach the full vision of God in the mountains. Now, I'm not a Catholic and I don't believe in this intermediate stage after death, but I do think that the way Tolkien is thinking about this is profoundly beautiful, and I do think he's right that we're all on this journey towards God, or at least our lives should be a journey towards God. And if they're not, we're not going to end up in this beautiful country and in the mountains. We're going to end up somewhere else. Priscilla also mentions how this is Tolkien's most autobiographical work. It is autobiographical in that it concerns the life of an artist and how an artist is to respond both to the pressures of his absorption in his creative ideas and to the demands of living an ordinary life in the ordinary world. In other words, how is he to enjoy living in the life of the imagination while at the same time remaining a moral being sensitive to the needs of other people? This was a situation my father faced throughout his adult life. He was the breadwinner in a family with 4 children. He earned his living by working extremely hard as an academic scholar and teacher, and for many years had to take on extra work in order to meet his financial commitments. So all this time, doing the right thing, supporting a family, working hard, but just burdened by this deep, rich imagination that calls him, that beckons him, that he wants to live in, that he wants to turn into something tangible, to turn into art, to share with other people. And I totally can relate to that. When I'm by myself, I get so caught up in my own mind, especially when I'm writing. I get so caught up in the world that I'm building and the characters that I'm living through. And it's like this whole other realm of existence. It's like its own experience, and it's broken the second that somebody walks in my door, and I'm snapped out of it, and I can't go back there again until I'm by myself and I'm free from other obligations and responsibilities, and all I have before me is this imaginative world, and I can just let myself be in it. And it is a struggle, and it is painful to not spend time in that world when you know that it exists and that it's there, and that you can get there if you can just find the time and the space to. It's really painful to be withheld from that. And I just love and admire the heart of Tolkien to portray the truth of God, to use his imagination to bring the truth of God to life, and to share that with other people. And that was his whole project. He was on this journey as an artist to God, and he wanted other people to be taken into that journey through his art and pointed in the direction of God through his art. And that is my aspiration as well. And I know I am nothing compared to Tolkien at the moment, and I'm okay with that. But even us smaller artists, even us niggles who are laughed at and who don't amount to much in our daily lives, but who still keep creating our art, whether or not anyone else appreciates it, it's all still worth it. Just the endeavor alone, the endeavor to speak truth, the endeavor to represent God rightly to the world is a worthwhile endeavor and a beautiful endeavor. And that's how I want to spend my life. That's what I want to do with my days. If I can only tear myself away from my real work and responsibilities to do so. As we've been playing, we've been just talking about Leaf by Niggle, and I'm starting to understand the stages of the purgatory part a little bit more. So first, Niggle's in this hospital that's also a workhouse. So the implication there is that he's being healed while he's there, but he's working to be healed. So that kind of ties in hand with working to pay off his debts and kind of redeeming and healing himself by doing so. And then he gets judged by the 2 voices, and they decide they're judging him still based off of his works on Earth, not just the work he's been doing in the workhouse, although that work is definitely contributing to, they're considering him being moved on to the next stage. And then when they decide that he's ready to move on to the next stage, that's when he goes to the open country where his art is realized, and he realizes that to get through this stage, he needs to kind of make amends for how he treated Parrish by him and Parrish working together to tend this garden. He, as the artist, doesn't know anything about actually tending the garden in real life, whereas Parrish didn't know anything about art, but he did know how to tend what was his in real life. So they need to find that balance and work together to kind of bring the garden to its completion. The artist and the gardener, the real and the imagination. And all this time they're looking at the mountains, which is the final destination. And the closer they get to finishing and completing the open country garden that they're working on, the the more they're longing for the mountains, and the more it's kind of coming into view, until finally they walk towards it, and then the shepherd comes to get them. So, I'm not a Catholic. I'm tracking how Tolkien's Catholic mind is kind of working through this purgatory stage, and how he kind of sees that as necessary in terms of Niggle completing his journey to get to the mountains, to get to heaven. If you ask my Protestant self, that is not how it works in real life. I think that really makes little of the doctrine of grace, the fact that Jesus' sacrifice isn't enough for Niggle to redeem him despite his sins. In the afterlife, in purgatory, he still needs to work on himself. And the key there is that it's him working on himself, him changing. It just gets into that whole, how do your works contribute to your salvation? Do your works contribute to your salvation discussion? And Tolkien would have believed in some respects that they do as a Catholic. I, as a Protestant, do not believe that. If I had written the story, Niggle would have gone straight to the mountains, because that's what Jesus did for him. And Jesus gives that freely and doesn't ask that Niggle spend any number of years anywhere else trying to get to the mountains. It's just a free welcome to the mountains. It's a free gift.
I just hit a great shot.
What do you think about my spiel though, babe?
Pretty awesome.
And of course, I just want to say that it's possible that I misunderstand Catholic theology and I misunderstand exactly what Tolkien is getting at here. I'm just verbally processing it right now, and just working off of my limited knowledge of Catholic theology. What I'm trying to say is, as a Protestant, I probably don't perfectly know and understand Catholic theology. I understand my own theology very well, and I believe it lines up with Scripture and with the Bible. And I've spent my life reading the Bible and thinking through these things, so I don't want to make it seem like I don't think about theology or understand theology, because I do live in theology, and I think about the nature of God, the nature of salvation, the nature of life, the point of life, all these things every day. But I think about them from my own Protestant lens and my Protestant way of interpreting the Bible, and Tolkien's way of interpreting Scripture, and his lens was different. And so I'm just trying to grapple with what his lens is, what it says, how he understood things, and how that's being kind of translated into his work here, into Leaf by Niggle. Just verbally processing, which is not something that I usually do. Usually I process by writing, but here we are outside and I'm just thinking about it, and we're talking about it, and it's been really good. What do you think of Leaf by Niggle? Super good?
Super good. There's a wedding going on.
So we're just discussing the ending of Leaf by Niggle, which is really, really profound. So Niggle makes it to the mountains. And then there's these counselors and statespeople back home talking about him and his legacy and saying that he was useless, his art was useless. And then for a while a piece of his painting, just of one leaf, called Leaf by Niggle, hangs in the museum, and then eventually the museum burns down, and so Niggle's Leaf and Niggle are entirely forgotten forever, essentially. But then those two voices, who are kind of the two voices of God, if you will, they're trying to decide what to call this region that Niggle and Parish worked on together in Purgatory, and they decide to call it Niggle's Parish. We were just talking about how funny that is, because a parish is a Catholic place of worship, so it's Niggle's place of worship, this landscape that he imagined his whole life and worked on his whole life. His art was his worship, essentially. And then God recognizes that in a way in the end.
It's like a dedicated work to God, I guess.
Yeah, it was a dedicated work to God, and it was better dedicated when he and Parish worked on it together in Purgatory, compared to when Niggle was working alone on it on Earth and holding a grudge against Parish all that time. So, very interesting. And yet, we Protestants always have a hard time with Purgatory.